I thought that creating sails for a sailing ship in Blender is really hard. I thought you need a lot of subdivisions and a complex cloth simulation to get some believable results. But I actually looked at some reference videos of ships sailing and noticed that the sails actually stay pretty much static the entire time and don't move too much. So if you look at these videos, we can see that the sails don't really move. The flags do, but the sails do not. Same with this one. They stay pretty much static. So suddenly, this whole thing of creating sails seemed a bit more manageable and not too hard. So I then spent a bit of time figuring out how to actually create sails in Blender that are not too heavy and which you can have in your scene without slowing it down too much. So this is what I came up with. So the first thing I did was to get some images of actual sailing ships and then with Photoshop extract some textures from it. And this is the file I came up with. To be honest, it's quite hard to get some high resolution images. So this one isn't too big. You can see the resolution here on the top. But even with this low resolution, I was surprised how well it works. So let me show you what I did. So in Blender, let's delete everything. And let's go to, where is it, image references, and load in these files. I will link them underneath this video so that you can download them yourself and use them in your project. So as you can see, the background is transparent, which will help us get a more interesting looking edge instead of like this straight CG edge. The preview here is a bit wrong, but again, that's just the preview. Let's cancel out the rotation and move it down a bit. I will press 7 on the numpad to get a top view, and I will start with this one here. I like these two here on the bottom the most. These ones have a bit of stretching going on, because again, as I said, it's quite hard to get these images and get them in high enough resolution. So let's move it like here to the center, and let's add a plane. And now I will just try to match this shape. It doesn't have to be 100% perfect because we in fact want it to overlap to get this nice transparent edge. So like this. Same with this one. Let's scale it up. The corners here in the bottom, there it's a bit more important to actually line them up. But this should work well. Let's add a cut in the middle, like this. Same with this one. So let's bevel it. And let's actually set this to %. Like this. What you want is to get somewhat evenly spread topology. So evenly tessellated topology. So let's subdivide this here. We get some weird topology going on here. So let me scale this here a bit. Maybe this will fix it. Not sure. Like so, let's increase it a bit. I like this. So what I'm going to do is select all the outer edges, invert the selection, and select smooth vertices. Let's repeat that. Maybe it's fine. I don't think it's too important. Let's scale it up a bit on the x-axis, like so, and pull it down a bit. Okay. So with this, let's create a new material. New. Let's open up the shader editor. Let's press Ctrl T and load this image in. Let's open the UV editor, apply the scale, apply the rotation, view, project from view, like this. And let's align it with the sail, like so. If we go into material preview, we can see this worked quite nice. So let's also use the alpha and plug it into the alpha slot. And in the settings, let's go to viewport display, change it to alpha blend and alpha hashed. Like so on. Currently it looks weird, so let's disable show backface. And let's rotate it. Like so. If we add a cloth simulation, let's hide this. If we play this, the cloth just falls to the ground. So let's select the top row, go into the vertex groups, add a new group, call it pin, press assign. So now in the cloth settings, let's go down to shape and choose the pin group. And now this stays and is actually pinned on the top row. Let's add in a force field, a wind force field. Let's add some strength. Like so. Let's shade smooth. Let's now also attach it at the bottom. So let's select these two corner vertices and let's extrude them out like so. Maybe move them down a bit. Let's give this some subdivisions. Like let's add 9. You can see it down here in the bottom corner. So let's add 9 here as well. And let's pin these as well, add them to the pin group assign. So now if we play this, we will get some actual ropes attached. Let's also increase the strength to 1000. I like this. So what I will do is subdivide this again to get some more resolution, but it's not even that necessary, but I will do it anyway. Subdivide. Let's select the pin group, and as you can see, this created some problems. So let's select this, add remove, same goes here on the bottom. Select these and remove them. Okay, this is what I want. Subdividing the mesh will create more vertices, and more vertices means that the whole sail weighs a lot more, because each vertex has its own mass. So we need to increase the strength to, let's say, 4000, like so. And that's basically how I made sails for a very long time. But when looking at references, you can see that the sails actually look a bit, the shape is a bit different. And I think this is due to this part here. This just looks a bit unnatural. And a way I found to counter that is to select these edges here. Don't select the top one, but these edges. Go into the object data, add a new vertex group and call it edges. Press assign, and in the cloth settings, go down to what is it called? To property weights. And here you can find the shrinking group. So let's select the edges and choose a value of 0.1 maybe. Let's try this. And as you can see, this gets us a lot closer to our desired shape. So let's change it to 1 and see the difference. So now here we can see we have this 90 degrees corner, but with a value of 0.1 we actually have this rounded corner, which looks a lot more realistic. And we also get these nice looking wrinkles, which helps to give the sail some interesting shape. And to be honest, this is actually the entire method. What we can do is disable the specularity, and what we can also do is add some extra ropes to this. So if we select this, press the Ctrl+ button right to here, and let's create a new vertex group calling it rope. Assign this, and let's now go to the geometry node editor. Let's press new, and we are actually going to do a very simple stuff. Curve a mesh to curve, and curve to mesh. So what this here allows us, let's first plug this selection into here, which will then allow us in the modifiers setting to press this and choose our rope vertex group like this. Let's select the geometry to the mesh, and this now allows us, when converting it back from curve to a mesh, to give it some thickness. So for this we need to add in a curve circle like this. Let's set the resolution to maybe 8 and plug it into profile curve. Now if we add in a join geometry and join these together, get this here, and if we decrease the radius, we will get some actual ropes. So let's decrease it even more, like this. And if we now play it, In the viewport it looks a bit off, but actually it is working exactly like we want it to work. So of course you can, before joining them, add a set material node and create a different rope material. Let's call this sail, and this rope shows a dark color. Select it here. Like so. This corner here looks a bit off, and this actually was the hardest part for me, since I really don't use geometry nodes that often. So my fix for this is to create a new mesh and create a knot object. So an easy way for this is this here. Let's divide it by 4. Not too important. Like this. I'm pressing Alt S to move it on the normals. Let's duplicate it, rotate it like so, and increase it. What I'm just looking for is something that from a distance looks like a knot. Something like so. Like this. Shade smooth. Rope. And now we can select these two vertices here and create another vertex group and call it knots. Assign it. And let's now add a instance on points and choose this geometry here and plug this into geometry like this. And let's select this pinned option here and let's drag the knot inside our graph here, and let's set it to instance like this. Let's reset the scale. Currently it's using everything, but for that we created our node group, so let's plug this in here and shows it here on the knots like this. So now we have this 0.0001. Maybe like this. And as you can see, this is not touching the knot, and that's what I said in the beginning, that this is an area we need to follow it more closely. So let's select the UVs here and pull them inwards a bit like so, which now connects them. And like this you have a sail. You can actually, what we can do is, let's go to the graph editor. Where do I have it? Here. Let's press K on the wind and press rotation. So now we added a rotation keyframe. And let's go to modifiers and add in a noise modifier. Let's scale it like this. Let's remove these ones for now. Let's just concentrate here. It's a bit too strong. I like this. Let's press copy F modifiers and let's go into these other channels and paste them and change the phase like this. So now if we try to simulate it again, this will prevent it a bit from staying totally static, because cloths in Blender and with the wind force field, it tends to even out over time, just stay static like this. We can also add stuff like a turbulence field to get some more details. Another trick is to go to shader editor and choose our sail material. Let's deactivate this pinned button here. This is our sail. So we want to add some smaller details, some smaller wrinkles to this. Like some small wind is creating these. So let's add in a wave texture like this. Let's preview it with Control Shift left mouse button like this. Let's add in an empty cube. Let's set it 2.1 to just keep it a bit smaller. Let's press here Control T and choose object and then choose our empty like this. So now what we can do is distort this, maybe so, increase the scale, rotate it like so, and let's now add some animation to this. Press K, location. Wait, let's go back to the very beginning. Let's press K, location. K, location. Select both of them. Shift E, linear extrapolation. It's a bit too slow. Let's pull this back again. Not sure why these other keyframes are showing here. Normally this should not be the case. So who knows what it will show for you. Like this. And let's plug this into a let's go with the displacement modifier. You can also try to plug it into a bump modifier. Let's go with a displacement for now, like so. Which will get some interesting stuff here. Let's decrease it quite a bit. Keep it very low. Even lower. It's moving too fast, so let's pull these two keyframes out a bit. Like so, and let's actually make it a lot bigger. Like so. And as you can see, this will create some wind effect. It looks a bit weird in the very beginning where the simulation starts, but normally this looks quite nice, and then you can always animate these settings here to get the desired result, or animate this one here. Let's actually increase this a bit. still looks a bit off, so let's increase the scale. I like this. So what you can do now is to duplicate this. Let's go to frame 1, and you can move it around however you like. You can scale it up, duplicate it a bunch of times, and depending on how much you subdivided it, it should still work quite well. What you can do is you can go to this sail texture here and actually move these ones here. Try to scale it to match. It's a bit wonky, but you can also spend some time to actually, like we did in with the first one, to actually spend some time on there matching the exact shape. But let's just try this. Try to match it as close as possible. What I'm going to do is add this ring here also. Let's pull this out like so. Same with the other side. Like so, so, and so. And now we have another sail. Works fine. And with this method you can also create a different shape than these already are, if you want it to be a bit different. Like so. For these other sails here, it's basically the same thing. I would advise to look at some references on especially how the ropes are connected. And the good thing with this method is you can always add some other ropes to increase the details. So let's add some ropes here, select them both, subdivide to give it some resolution. Let's add them to the ropes vertex group, which will add some ropes to it like this. And this will very quickly and efficiently add some ropes without you having to add different object and adding some relationships to them, but you can simply add some ropes. I also tried this approach here by adding a rope like this, because as you can see, some of the sails have this specific rope going down, but the problem is that I could not really get the collision to work with the sail properly. It would always just go through the sail at some point, like so. I'm not even sure. I think it's all in the pin group now, so let's remove it from the pin group. As you can see, it works now, but again, it's going through the sail and enabling self-collision didn't really help. Increasing the steps didn't really help too much. So if you have a solution for that, this would be really helpful. But for now, just having the texture on here, even though it's quite blurry looking and not that high resolution, this really helps to create some interesting looking sails. So I have a different solution for this one here. It's very janky and isn't like how it works in real life. So since I don't know geometry nodes that well myself. I actually wrote a question on blenderartists.com and found a helpful artist that showed me how he did it in the node editor. So I then copied his node setup. So let's select this. Let's have a look in the geometry nodes editor. Like so. And as you can see, it's a bit more difficult, a bit harder, and I don't know what these are doing. I couldn't have done it myself. I will link the question to where he explained it to me, where he showed some screenshots, so that you can actually replicate it yourself, or you can just copy this here. I will release this file for my tier 2 subscribers here on Patreon. And as you can see, I did some experimentation with 2 ropes here. Like so, I added this pulley, or however this is called, to just have it look more interesting, but just to one side. I did not add the node, the displacement waves here, but as you could see, it's really easy to do, to add these, and you can just take these like so, scale it like you need it to be, and it works fine. You can then maybe adjust this here, and this is really lightweight. As you can see, we have a lot of different simulations going on, and as you can see here, this is what I did for the front sails, creating some bit more interesting ropes. I looked at references for that. It's the same thing, I just extruded some vertices out, like so. With this one, adding these here as a shrinking group didn't actually work. Let me see. Instead, I tried some different edges to add to the shrinking group, which gave me some interesting results. So I would recommend just to try out all these different property weights, especially the shrinking group, but also the structural group, the shear group, which will just give you some more interesting results. If the cloth is very simple, it like the more moving stuff you will add, the more interesting the cloth simulation will look. As you can see, it's not that subdivided, not that dense, but still we are getting some interesting details down here. So let me just save this and try to subdivide it like so. Maybe once more. It's not quite heavy, but we get a lot more results, a lot more folds in here. Of course, now this cloth is much heavier than all the others, and we would need to increase the wind field, the wind force field, but still this looks quite interesting. Again, you will get this file on my tier 2 Patreon. So that's basically it. I hope this was helpful to you and will help you create all kinds of cloth simulations. This method isn't just useful for creating sails, but for doing all kinds of cloth simulations. The important thing is to find a good texture, and if you have a texture with folds in it already, then you don't need to add too much subdivisions, which will keep this scene light. And with this here, you can always move these. We can add our cursor in here and select all this here. Select the period key to cursor. Now we can rotate around the cursor. We can scale it to whatever we like. which will adjust the simulation. You can also rotate it however you want, and the simulation will adjust. So I hope you like this, and I will see you soon.